The last thing my older brother, Eli, ever said to me was, "Don't follow the red lights." We were just kids, camping in the sprawling woods behind our grandparents' farm in West Virginia. A summer thunderstorm had rolled in, chasing us from our tent into the damp, earthy-smelling basement. We were huddled in sleeping bags, listening to the rain hammer the ground above when he told me the story our grandpa had told him, a story about the woods. He said that sometimes, on nights when the mist was thick and the moon was hidden, you'd see them. Little points of red light, bobbing gently between the trees like dying fireflies. They weren't animals, and they sure weren't fireflies. They were watchers. And if you ever saw them, you were supposed to look at your feet and count to 100. You never, ever followed them. The next night, Eli was gone. His sleeping bag was empty, cold. The basement door was wide open, letting in the chill of the pre-dawn. The only clue was a single muddy footprint on the porch step, pointed towards the tree line. The police, the search parties, the dogs, they found nothing. My grandparents sold the farm within a year. The case went cold, and a part of me froze solid with it, locked in that basement, forever listening for the sound of my brother's return. 20 years later, the grief is a stone I carry in my chest. I'm a journalist now, and the logical part of my brain tells me Eli was probably taken by a person, a monster of the human variety. But the little boy in me, the one who shivered in that basement, still believes in the red lights. That's why I'm back. The new owners, an elderly couple who bought the land for a song, called me after finding a box of my grandfather's old things in the attic. They mentioned something else, something that made my blood run cold. They said their dog had been acting strange, barking at the tree line every night for a week, and that the night before it had run off. When it came back at dawn, its fur was matted with a sweet, sickly smell, like rotting honeysuckle. I'm standing on the back porch now, looking out at the same dark wall of trees that swallowed my brother. The air is heavy and still, the way it was that night. The new owners are asleep inside, and I'm alone with my flashlight and a racing heart. I've been here for 3 hours, scanning the darkness, seeing nothing but the skeletal shapes of oaks and pines. I'm about to give up, to write it off as a fool's errand, when I see it. A flicker of crimson deep in the woods. It winks out. Then another, maybe 50 yards to the left. Then a third. They're small, like distant coals, and they don't cast any light on the trees around them. They just hang in the darkness, pulsing with a faint, malevolent glow. My breath fogs in the suddenly frigid air. Every instinct, every fiber of my adult logic is screaming at me to run inside, to lock the door, to call the police. But the stone of grief in my chest cracks open, and all I can hear is Eli's voice. Don't follow the red lights. But he's in there. I know it. I can feel it. I step off the porch, the damp grass soaking my shoes. The woods swallow me whole, the canopy overhead blotting out the starlight. My flashlight beam feels feeble, a child's toy against the oppressive dark. I push forward, my footsteps crunching on dead leaves, the sound impossibly loud. The red lights disappear and reappear, always just at the edge of my vision, leading me deeper. The smell hits me then, that cloying, rotten honeysuckle scent the owners described. It's thick enough to taste, a syrupy foulness at the back of my throat. I press on, my heart trying to beat its way out of my ribs. I stumble into a small clearing, and that's when I see him. A figure, standing with its back to me. It's wearing the same faded blue jacket Eli wore that night. "Eli?" I whisper, my voice cracking. The figure turns slowly. It's him. It's my brother, but he hasn't aged a day. He's still 10 years old. His face is pale, his eyes wide and full of a terror that mirrors my own. He opens his mouth to speak, but no sound comes out. Instead, a dozen of those little red lights drift out between his lips, floating into the air around his head. He lifts a trembling hand and points behind me. I turn. The woods are full of them. Dozens of people, men, women, children, all standing perfectly still among the trees. They are all from different eras, some in modern clothing, some in fashions from a century ago. And from the eyes and open mouth of each one, a soft red light glows. They are human lanterns. Their bodies just hollow vessels for whatever these lights are. They aren't the watchers. They are the cages. The rotten honeysuckle smell becomes overpowering. The red lights around Eli's head suddenly swarm towards me, not as lights, but as a cloud of fine glittering dust. I feel a terrifying warmth as it settles on my skin, a soothing, hypnotic feeling that tries to push its way into my mind, promising to quiet the fear, to erase the pain. It feels like coming home. I understand now. The lights don't take you, they use you. They find you when you're lost, when you're grieving, when your mind is at its most vulnerable, and they offer a terrible, permanent peace. They hollow you out and move in. I stumble backward, but it's too late. The warmth is inside me now, a soft red static filling my thoughts. My vision is tinted crimson. I look down at my hands and see a soft, pulsing red glow beginning to emanate from my own skin. I tried to scream, but my voice is gone. All that comes out is a silent, glowing cloud. I have found my brother, and now I will never, ever leave. The last of my own thoughts fade, replaced by a single collective urge to find the next lost soul, to wait, and to watch. I remember the night. The silence in my house became a living thing. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a sleeping neighborhood, but a heavy, watchful stillness that seemed to press in on the windows. My wife, Clara, was out of town visiting her sister, and I was alone in our 2-storied colonial for the first time since we'd moved in. The house, a real handyman special we'd gotten for a song, was usually filled with the sound of our renovations, the buzz of a saw, the bang of a hammer. But that night, all the tools were silent, and the house was reminding me just how old and just how empty it truly was. It started around 2 a.m. I was jerked awake not by a sound, but by the absence of one. The low, consistent hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen had suddenly cut out. The digital clock on my bedside table was dark. A power outage. I remember lying there in that profound blackness, listening to the frantic thump of my own heart, thinking this was the kind of quiet that could swallow a man whole. And then the first noise came. It wasn't from outside. It was a soft, rhythmic creak, 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 coming from directly above me, from the attic. We never used the attic. The pull-down ladder was warped and stuck fast, and Clara was too creeped out by the idea of it to let me force it open. She said it felt like the house was holding its breath up there. Now, listening to that deliberate, pacing footstep, I understood what she meant. Someone, or something, was walking up there, slowly, heavily. My blood went cold. I was a grown man, a former high school football player, but in that moment, I was a terrified child, frozen solid under my comforter. I must have lain there for an hour, just listening to that endless pacing. It never sped up. It never slowed down. It was the metronome of a nightmare. Finally, a surge of anger, of defensive pride for my home, pushed me out of bed. I grabbed the heavy mag light from my nightstand, my fingers fumbling on the cool metal. I didn't dare call out. I just crept into the hallway, the beam of my flashlight cutting a wobbly path through the darkness. The sound was clearer here, the wood groaning under a significant weight. I looked up at the ceiling, at the simple painted-over square that concealed the attic entrance, and I saw it. A fine dust, like powdered snow, was sifting down from the seams of the trapdoor, plaster dust. My breath caught in my throat. Something was right on the other side of that thin piece of wood. The pacing stopped. The silence that followed was 1,000 times worse. It was a waiting silence. I stood there, flashlight beam trained on the ceiling for what felt like an eternity, my muscles screaming with tension. Then a new sound began. A slow, grating drag. It was the sound of the attic ladder being pulled down from the inside. I saw the trapdoor shudder in its frame. A thin crack of pure, absolute blackness appeared. They were coming out. I turned and ran. I didn't think. I just flew down the hallway and took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I skidded into the kitchen, my mind racing, fumbling for my car keys on the counter. That's when I saw it. The back door was wide open, swinging gently in the night breeze. I knew with a certainty that turned my stomach to lead that I had locked it. I always locked it. And on the kitchen table, illuminated by the pale moonlight, was a single old-fashioned porcelain doll. It was lying on its back, its painted blue eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Its frilly dress was stained with what looked like old dirt. We didn't own any dolls. Clara hated them. As I stared, paralyzed, the doll's head slowly, mechanically turned to face me. Its painted smile seemed to stretch into something cruel, knowing. A high, tinny giggle echoed through the silent kitchen. That's when the footsteps started on the stairs behind me. Not a hurried chase, but the same slow, deliberate pace from the attic. They were coming down. Thump, drag, thump, drag. I was trapped. The open door was a taunt, the doll a sentinel. I spun around, raising my flashlight like a club, ready to face whatever was descending into my living room. The beam of light hit the bottom of the staircase, and I saw a foot. It was small, a child's foot, bare and caked in mud. It took another step down, into the light, and I saw her. She was maybe 7 or 8, wearing a tattered white nightgown that was filthy and soaked at the hem. Her skin was pale as bone, and her hair was a wild, matted tangle. But it was her eyes that stopped my heart. They were solid black, like polished obsidian, holding no light, no emotion, nothing human. She held a small, rusted trowel in her one hand, dragging its metal edge along the wall with a screech that set my teeth on edge. She reached the bottom step and stopped, her head tilting to one side with a sound like cracking twigs. I stood there, trembling, waiting for her to lunge, for some unspeakable horror to unfold. But she just stood there, those bottomless black eyes fixed on me. And then she spoke. Her voice was a dry, raspy whisper, like leaves skittering across pavement. "You shouldn't have moved my bones," she whispered. And in a flash of horrific clarity, I remembered. Last weekend, while digging a new flower bed for Clara by the old oak tree in the backyard, my shovel had hit something hard. Not a rock, but something that gave a sickening crunch. I'd brushed away the dirt and found a small, rotted wooden box. Inside, wrapped in a disintegrating cloth, were tiny human bones. Frightened, superstitious, I'd simply filled the hole back in, telling myself it was an old animal, a bad memory best buried. I never said a word to Clara. The little girl took a step towards me, the trowel lifting in her hand. Her lipless mouth stretched into a terrible smile. She rasped, "I was so lonely down there in the dark, but you found me. Now you can stay and play with me forever." The flashlight in my hand flickered and died. The last thing I saw was her small, muddy form gliding towards me through the absolute blackness. And the last thing I heard was that dry, rustling whisper right next to my ear. "You're my daddy now." I remember the night she came back. Not as a memory, not as a ghost in a dream, but as a physical presence in my house. It was a Thursday, the kind of deep, silent autumn night where the world seems to hold its breath. The only light in my small suburban home came from the bluish glow of the television, casting long, dancing shadows across the living room walls. I was alone, had been for years, ever since the accident. The accident that took my wife, Sarah, and our daughter, Lily. A patch of black ice, a guardrail that gave way, a frigid river that swallowed the car whole. They only ever found me, shivering and broken on the bank, the current having mercifully spat me out. They never found their bodies. The guilt was a tenant that had long overstayed its welcome in my soul, a constant, gnawing cold that was far worse than any winter chill. I was the one who had insisted on taking the back road that night. I was the one driving. So when I heard the first sound, I dismissed it as the house settling or the groan of an old oak branch scraping against the roof. But then it came again. Not a groan, a scrape. A slow, deliberate drag, like something heavy being pulled across the hardwood floor in the hallway upstairs. My blood turned to ice water. Every hair on my arm stood on end. I muted the TV, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The silence that followed was somehow louder, more menacing. And then, a whisper. It was faint, distorted, like a voice heard from the bottom of a well. But I knew that voice. It was Lily's. "Daddy!" The word was a fishhook in my heart. I sat frozen, my knuckles white on the armrests of my chair. It couldn't be. It was my grief, my sleep-deprived mind playing the cruelest trick imaginable. "I'm cold, Daddy!" This time it was clearer, closer. It came from the foot of the stairs. I slowly, so slowly turned my head. The hallway was pitch black, but I could just make out a small shadowy silhouette standing there, a child's silhouette. Water dripped from it, a soft, irregular patter on the floorboards. My breath hitched. "Lily?" I whispered, the name a prayer and a curse on my lips. The figure didn't move. It just stood there dripping. A part of me, the rational part that had been to therapy and read all the books on coping with loss, screamed that this was a hallucination. But another part, a deeper, primal part, knew. It knew the shape of my daughter. It knew the sound of her voice. "I'm so cold," the voice whispered again, and this time it was right beside my chair. I jerked back, a strangled cry escaping my throat. There was nothing there, just the empty space and the smell of damp, stagnant river water. The dripping sound was all around me now, a macabre symphony coming from the ceiling, the walls. I scrambled out of the chair, fumbling for the light switch. The sudden fluorescent glare was blinding, but it revealed nothing. The hallway was empty. The floor was dry. For the next week, the manifestations grew stronger, more aggressive. I'd see a small, wet handprint on the bathroom mirror in the morning. I'd find puddles of murky water in the middle of the kitchen floor. At night, the dragging sound would return, followed by that tiny, waterlogged voice always calling for me, always telling me how cold she was. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. The house, once my sanctuary, had become a tomb, haunted by the daughter I failed to protect. The breaking point came last night. I was lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the relentless drip, drip, drip from the corner of the room. The air was frigid, my breath pluming in the moonlight filtering through the window. "Daddy!" The voice was no longer a whisper. It was a gurgle, a choked sound full of water and anguish. It was right next to my ear. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears streaming down my temples into the pillow. "I'm sorry, Lily, I'm so sorry," I sobbed into the pillow. The bed dipped, as if a small weight had settled at the foot of it. I didn't dare look. I could feel the cold radiating from it, a deep, penetrating chill that seeped into my bones. I could hear the wet, ragged sound of its breathing. "You left us, Daddy." "I didn't mean to. I tried to save you," I cried out, my voice cracking with decades of suppressed agony. The dragging sound started again, slow and heavy, moving from the foot of the bed, around the side, coming towards me. The smell of river rot was overpowering. This was it. She had come for me. My little girl, my Lily, had finally come back from the dark water to take me with her. A strange, morbid peace settled over me. Maybe this was what I deserved. Maybe this was the only way the guilt would ever end. "Take me," I whispered, finally opening my eyes. The moonlight illuminated the thing standing beside my bed. It was a child, yes, but it wasn't Lily. The skin was bloated and gray, the hair a matted tangle of weeds. Its eyes were solid, milky white orbs, and its mouth hung open, a dark, hollow cavity. But the nightgown, it was the same one Lily had been wearing that night, the one with the little yellow ducks. It reached out a small, swollen hand towards my face. I didn't flinch. I welcomed the end. But its hand moved past my cheek, past my head, and pointed a single, decomposing finger towards the bedroom door. And then it spoke, its voice a chorus of bubbles and despair. "She's coming, Daddy. You have to hide. Mama's so angry." My blood went from ice to absolute zero. This wasn't Lily. This thing was just a messenger, a warning. From downstairs, I heard the front door creak open. Not a forced entry, but a slow, deliberate swing. And then a new sound began. A wet, heavy footstep, slogging its way through the foyer. Each step was a squelch of waterlogged shoes on my hardwood floor, accompanied by a deeper, more resonant drag. The sound of something much, much larger being pulled behind her. The small thing at my bedside looked at me with its dead white eyes, and for a moment I saw a flicker of my daughter's fear in them. And then it dissolved into a puddle of foul-smelling water on my rug. The footsteps had reached the bottom of the stairs. I could hear the wood groaning under a tremendous, sodden weight. A new voice echoed through the house, a voice I hadn't heard in 10 years, but one I would recognize until my dying breath. It was Sarah's voice, but twisted into a guttural, hateful roar, dripping with the fury of the deep. "Mark!" I finally moved. I scrambled off the bed, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. I stumbled into my walk-in closet, pulling the door shut just as the heavy, dragging footsteps reached the top of the stairs. I crouched in the darkness, surrounded by my hanging clothes, peering through the slots in the door. The bedroom door swung inward, smashing against the wall, and there she stood. Sarah, or what was left of her. Her body was monstrously swollen, her clothes torn and caked with river mud. Her hair floated around her head as if she were still submerged. In one hand, she dragged the massive, rust-covered guardrail from our crash, its twisted metal screeching against the floor. Her eyes found mine instantly, even through the closet door. They were black pools of pure, undilated rage. She took a heavy step into the room, the guardrail clanging behind her. She smiled, a horrific cracking of her blue-tinged lips. "I found you."